we see like 130 different ways of asking how do I draw various types of lines, in particular straight lines, 40 different suggestions for rectangles, 20 for squares, 14 for ellipses. So it's just, this data suggests that maybe a multi-step process is eluding some portion of the audience for the software, people who are actually using it day to day. All right, so those are a couple of examples of just the types of data you can get from this, and they're fairly high level, but again, we do get a fair, I mean, tens to hundreds of thousands of queries, so we do get a good chunk of that long tail, so you can get pretty specific. I just want to go into how we can start to identify interesting parts of the suggestions that we should focus on. So the problem is that when you get 140,000 suggestions, not all of them are useful for understanding how people use the software. Maybe people are just trying to download the software. Maybe they want to read reviews or something like that. So you want to be able to pick the ones that are useful. And you kind of already saw a taste of that, but I'm just going to go into it in a bit more detail. So in our research, we've identified in this space about 6 different types of queries. The ones I'm going to look at, though, for understanding people's use are operating instruction queries, so people asking how do I perform a particular task, or troubleshooting queries. And what we did is we actually, when we looked at these queries, it turned out that if a query was phrased as a question, so how to or can, things like that, it was typically instructions, and people looking for operating instructions. So I have some templates up here. The other thing, too, you can sort of see these sort of imperative statements. So anytime you say like draw a circle or these sort of the verbs in the present tense, that kind of a thing, that also tended to indicate people looking for operating instructions. Whereas for troubleshooting, it tended to be these sort of statements of fact. This is the situation. And the other thing that's useful oftentimes is just to look at queries that have certain keywords in them. They're the obvious ones here, but it's just to give you an idea of how to try to filter the data in, again, a quick and dirty way to get at what you're interested in. And of course, once you've done that, there's a variety of different visualizations and tools you can use to try to navigate all this data. So a simple tag cloud here, this one for Inkscape I have. And I'll actually show maybe a live demo if there's time of some of the data that we have for various projects. So your simple tag cloud here. The other one I like here is the term co-occurrence visualization. So the way that this works, let me see if I can use this. So the stuff down this column here represent the most common words, and then the stuff that goes across horizontally represent the words that co-occur, that show up in the same query as these words. So you can see right away here that what people want to do, what do people want to draw? Well, they want to draw lines, rectangles, curves, circles, etc. You know, what do they want to do with color? Well, they change a color, eye color, hair color, etc. And so it's just a way of summarizing the data and getting a sort of sense and a feel for what people are interested in doing. And actually, before I get into current work and stuff, I will just show some of this. So we have these interactive tag clouds. Which one's this for? That's, so we've got data for Inkscape, for Scribus, for Blender, for GIMP, and you can kind of, unfortunately the resolution's a little low here, but you can sort of see what I'm talking about here, where is if I click on draw, if we connect, I promise it was working before, there we go. You can kind of get a sense of, again with the tag cloud, of what people are trying to draw. So this is filtered on the word draw, and you can sort of see on the right here all the queries that have to do with drawing in GIMP. And so so we can chat about this data set afterwards, I think. So I think I'm just going to conclude with an idea of other ways that we are looking to use the data currently, and this gets back to your question. So So up to now, I've been advocating that we use this data to understand how people are using the software in practice, to get a real quick sense of a large user community. But we can also make more active use of the data. So this is some of the work that I've been doing currently. So basically, when somebody types in a search query into Google, they retrieve documents, tutorials, forum postings, etc. And embedded in those pages are references to commands in the software. And we can produce a list of commands by instrumenting the software or just by looking at the localization database or the string database. So anyways, what we do is that we perform the searches, we retrieve the documents, and we identify the commands that are in those documents. And when we take our giant data set from Google Suggest, we can actually create these really fairly large graphs. Where, sorry? Do you identify the commands manually or automatically? Well, with GIMP, we just use the in-GIMP data set. So in GIMP, because it was instrumented to record all the command invocations, we had a list of all the commands. But for other applications, I didn't want to have to instrument those applications to get the names of the commands. So I did it in a kind of hackish but very quick way. So again, I just looked at the translation files, like the string translation databases, and now I have all the error messages, all the menu names, all the command names, and it's just very quick. In any case, when you do that and you take this very large data set, you can create these associations, these graphs. So queries on one side and commands on the other side, and what you can do then is you can build a smarter set of sort of command search. So if you were to integrate search into the interface, if I want to say convert to black and white, it's going to come back with, based on just looking at the pages that Google returns, channel mixer, grayscale, desaturate. And it's a search engine, so the rankings here may not always be the best. So maybe desaturate should be above channel mixer, but we've got a pretty good result there. And similarly, you can kind of do command recommendations, if you will. So if I ask what commands are used in a similar context to stretch contrast, you see that white balance, auto levels, and colors are also used in that context. And then the other thing we can do, so that's going from this direction, so going from queries to commands. But because we have this graph built from all of these queries, we can go in the opposite direction. So from a command, what queries are associated with that? So here's something that I'm working on right now. This is just a mock-up, but suppose that this is a tooltip for the ellipse select tool in GIMP. Well, based on the data that we have, we can say that, well, ellipse select is related to the following searches. So draw a circle, draw an ellipse, text on circle, correct red eye, vignette effect, and you can see what other commands are associated with that. Now, this is generated by the user community on the fly, so it's sort of evolving as people's use of the software evolves. And the nice thing about searches is that if you think about what you're doing when you when you type in a query, you're trying to come up with this very concise, information-rich phrase to describe what it is that you're doing or what you're looking for, your information need. And so I think that these queries here, they're compact, but they give a lot of, they give a pretty good indication of what the people were after when they were typing those searches. So this is one way that we're looking at integrating this data into the application to make it actionable. So I think that really concludes everything I wanted to say today, but I'm more than happy to take questions at this time.
So aside from all this looking very, very interesting, the one factor I wasn't sure if you looked at yet is if when you're phrasing things and maybe thinking about, as a developer, thinking about using these results to change the phrasing of what you have in your application so people can understand it better.
Right.
Have you looked in it at all, is the reason you don't get searches on other phrasing is because it's a good phrasing to begin with and you're making more people happy and only the unhappy minority are going out to search for things, and you might make things worse rather than better by switching?
So I think that one thing I probably should have mentioned going into this is that this is a way of, I would say, doing a pilot study, in the sense that if you want to, so everybody talks about doing usability studies or just observing people use your software, right? But what you want to do is you want to put people into situations that a lot of people want to perform these tasks, and you want to put people into situations where you're going to get some sort of value from that user evaluation. So when you run these queries and you get these queries back, it's a suggestion to watch somebody perform that task. And if they're having trouble, then you can try to get some insight from these follow-up observations. But it might turn out that it's not a usability problem, it's just a very popular task that people want to perform.
Yeah, and so to kind of build on that, so that's a good question, John. But I think you can look at some of the numbers we have where, like, when people are querying some of these things, like on an average of once every 30 minutes, that this is a fairly, some of these things are fairly big problems, or they're things that a fair number of people are searching on. And so, yeah, we're not going to get the stuff where people know how to do it and therefore they don't need to search for it, yeah. Right? But as he mentioned earlier, there isn't necessarily a one-size-fits-all interface. And so having this ability to search, like he showed with the, can you go back to like the
yeah,
where you're
this one here.
Yeah, so like, having this ability to type in, this is what I want to do, and then it comes back with the actual command names in the interface might be a way to kind of bridge the gap between people who use the vocabulary of your application and those who are unfamiliar with it.
I'm just curious about what tool you're using to scrape, or whether that's publicly available. Like, for instance, the Digital Methods Initiative, you can use all of their stuff, but just curious how you're getting these query suggests.
Okay, so so it's actually a good question. When I'm actually grabbing like these thousands of query suggestions, that's a Perl script that I run, and I don't make it publicly available because, quite frankly, it's sort of in this gray area where we're using the same interface that Firefox and other web browsers use to do query suggestions in the search box in the corner, but I'm not entirely sure. I don't want to release it publicly because it's in this bit of a gray area because we are sending automated queries. What I'm suggesting to you guys is that you guys can get a lot of bang for your buck just by typing in queries manually, which is perfectly fine, the way I showed you, and get a fairly high-level view of how people are using your software. Oh, yeah. So by typing in these types of things.
Which is not to say you couldn't go and write the same Perl script yourself.
It's like half a page.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question about this graph between queries and commands.
Yeah.
Do you have a tool to make this relation, or has to be done manually?
Well, I have a tool that does it. I didn't want to get into the details too much, but basically this graph here, it's using some techniques from information retrieval literature to do question answering, and then so basically what you do is you build a question answer engine. So you view your instead of like a search engine, you want to be able to type in a question and get just like the name of a command or whatever as an answer. So I built that engine and I performed those queries and I just stored the results in the database, like almost a cache. And then that is it's just a bipartite graph. It's just
well, because I remember that like saturate and black and white, they don't have any common words. So how do you make the link?
Oh yeah. So basically, the argument is that these pages act as like a Rosetta Stone. So a tutorial is telling people how to perform a task in the software. So they're going to have to mention the command names in the documents. But in order to be retrieved for that query, they also have to have some words in common with the query. So by performing the search, retrieving the relevant pages, and then by extracting the command names from those pages, you've linked the two vocabularies.
Okay, thanks.
Any more questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Personally, it's wonderful. I understood what it is.